and it was one of the hardest decisions we ever made to leave there after 7 years. But I want to just tell you that now we go back 50 years later. Church is still standing, doing great. They just built a new sanctuary. And so we're grateful to the Lord. Just let me give you a little side story. Just got this. You wonder sometimes, do you have ministry outside? I mean, Cowpath Road. I mean, give me a break. Okay? So, do any of you maybe watch Fox News or listen to talk radio? You can admit it. Okay, it's okay. I don't know if you ever come across a guy by the name of Jim Jordan. I heard him on there at a time. I thought, man, here's a conservative. And he's out of the state of Ohio, of all things. And I thought, wow, Good Friday morning. I mean, you have these thoughts that just kind of fly in your mind. So I Googled him. I'm thinking, I'm from Ohio. I'm a Buckeye. And it's all right. Let's see. How's Ohio State done the last couple of years in Michigan? But anyway, yeah, yeah, that's what they said the last 10 years. But anyway, I know it will. It came all too often. So I Googled this guy's name. He grew up in rural Champaign County. You know where the Newson Missionary Church is located? Champaign County. Do you know he went to graduate from high school? Graham High School. When our daughter she was 5, she went to the Graham school system. Now, it's not as big as Seaboing by any means. And we had a young couple in our church who came for 3 years to help us. They had 3 children. John and Shirley Jordan was the couple. They had a son by the name of Jim. Now, I'm not positive. Well, I am 99.9% positive. Same Jim Jordan, of which I have a video when his parents presented him to the Lord at our church. And a video of them sitting around our little kitchen table by our 10 by 50 trailer, which was our parsonage. And I've got to make a copy of our video, send it to him, and just update him a little bit on his spiritual pilgrimage that he had. So you have influence. Influence you have no clue about when these little rugrats are running around. And you're putting something into their lives. Well, you didn't hear me. Anyway, we left there after 7 years, went to Cloney Woods. We're there for 25 years. And what Brian referenced was, I'm grateful to the Lord for the 2 churches that were planted while we were there. St. Clair was the first one with Mike Cudrett, thanks to the district for their help in that one. It wouldn't have, and Jim was the church planning director at the time, and wouldn't have happened without that. And what was interesting about that was the very year that it was a 5-year plan, the very year we had scheduled to do it, I went to the staff and I said, guys, we can't do it this year. We've had some downturns. Financially, we can't do it. Leadership-wise, we can't do it. We did it only because I came away saying this really wasn't anything about us. It was all about him. It wouldn't have happened without him. Okay, and so we can't really boast about it. Okay, and the Lord had to turn my attitude around because I had a lot of good reasons why we shouldn't plant. Now you say, yeah, but it's a large church. Well, but you still have issues. You still have financial. Remember, you still have budgets to meet. You still have leadership positions to fill. And you have attendance you have to send into the district. Okay? And if you give people away, that's going to dip. Okay? So I had good reasons why not to do it. But the Lord changed my attitude. And so the second church was Romeo, which now, I mean, think of it. We have the privilege of having one of our sons pastoring there. Okay? How cool is that? And so my comment to Brian and Justin was, and to others. I just wished that we'd have done a lot more of it. We could have. I mean, we still don't have a church in Marysville. We should have a church there. We probably have 200 to 250 people that make Marysville their home. Okay? And at Colonial Woods. Okay? We could have done that. So I want to encourage you guys. Don't wait too long to think about it. And you may say, we can't. I want to tell you, yeah, you may not be able to, but God can. And if he calls you to do it, he'll empower, he'll help you to succeed at that. Well, we went, and then my wife said, we were there for 25 years. My wife said, Bill, you'll die at Colonial Woods. I said, well, honey, that may be. I don't feel called away. But just one call, one phone call, just like that, turned everything around. I knew it was the Lord's will that we leave there. And I went to become a district superintendent in the East Central District, which is my home district. It's where I grew up, located in Troy was where the office is. And they also have the Ludlow Falls Camp, and which was dear to my heart, and which was in really, really bad shape. So we went back there for 3 years, and then I was elected as president of the Missionary Church. So all of that goes into what I was feeling. But July 2004, I'm in prayer. I'm just saying, Lord, what is it you want this denomination to do? We're called the Missionary Church. Now, how many of you recognize the name Bob Logan? And if you recognize, some of you do. Bob was one of the early pioneers. Wouldn't you say, Jim, in the whole church planting movement? Charles Ridley came up with some of the assessment that you all go through. You may not recognize it as a Ridley assessment, but that's what it is. And I remember John Moran was the president, and I was in a meeting, and Jim, you might have been there, when Bob Logan said, you call yourselves the missionary church, but you're not a missionary church. Now that's how to win friends and influence people. Okay? And he did some of that day. He said, you may be overseas, but in the United States, you are not a missionary church. You call yourselves that, but you're not doing it. Did he offend a few people? Yeah, it's like, remember that time when some of the Pharisees said to Jesus, you know you offended us by that statement. Like, duh. Yeah, I know I did. And Bob knew he offended some of us. But he was right. We really hadn't done anything. And so that put us on a new path. That was probably back in the 80s, wouldn't it been, Jim? Maybe early 90s. And so all of that is coming in, and then we had some really good stuff with Logan and a few of those guys. Tom Nebel, who wrote the book about small communities. It's a great book if some of you can get that. And so all that's working on me. So I'm praying. But I'm really not thinking about that, though I'm sure some of that was there. I mean, that was my focus when I was in the East Central District. In fact, Joe Winger, who was one of our pastors at the Fairborn Church, now is the district superintendent in the North Central District, said, Bill, he said, you find a way to talk about church planting, whatever you're talking about. And I said, well, that's probably true. So I'm praying, and I get this sense. It wasn't a voice. You've had some of this in your life. I just sense this is what I want for the missionary church. And it was so out of the ordinary, so crazy. But for a month, I could not shake it. I said, Lord, it's not possible. You don't, what are you talking about? And of course, then your mind goes into high gear to think, how in the world would we do that? How would that happen? Finally, a month later, I said, Lord, you either confirm this or you remove this. Because I don't want this anymore. If this isn't of you, and if this is just a ploy of the enemy, then remove it or confirm it. That was on a Thursday, by the end of the week. Friday, no, maybe that same day. Dwight Smith, Jim, you'll remember Dwight, a church planting guru, very, very involved in church planting in Eastern Europe. Went to the Philippines. Said the goal was to plant in about 5 years in the Philippines by the year 2000, 50,000 churches. So I saw him later. I said, Dwight, how'd you do? He said, we surpassed our goal. Same thing in Europe, Eastern Europe. So I said, okay, Lord. So anyway, Dwight was speaking at the national office that day. I had never met. I'd heard about Dwight, but I didn't know Dwight. And so he's speaking to a group of guys about church planting. And then he comes over and he takes me into a room, and we're sitting there talking, across the table. And he said, Bill, the missionary church is a little farther along at some of this church planting stuff. And the missionary church could have 10,000 churches in 15 years. Now, what Dwight had no clue is what I sensed the Lord say to me. He said, I want the missionary church to have 10,000 churches in 10 years. I thought, well, maybe the 15 years takes it off. Jonesy said, maybe the 5 years will take us 5 years to get ready. Okay. 10,000 churches in 10 years. How in the world would we do that? Now, let me just tell you, we didn't do it in the United States. I still think that's where it was intended to be. We did do it overseas. In a decade, we increased by over 10,000 churches. So in one hand, since that has been confirmed. So anyway, I still wrestled with it for months, just my wife and me. She knew about it. Finally, I said, hey, I gotta somehow communicate this, if this is of the Lord or not. The church is going to have to help me decide. So I talked to a few people, and I went to the district superintendents. That they were still called districts then, and I said to them, "Would you be willing to dream with me? What if?" And I'm going to ask you this question: if God called us to plant 10,000 churches in 10 years, no excuses, how would we do it? How would we do? See, sometimes he lays out the vision, but he doesn't tell us how to get it done. He said, that's your job. So I wish I could say that it went better, as good as I would have liked it to have gone. It didn't go wasn't as well received as I had hoped it would be. And part of it, there's some scary things in there. But I came with just the thought, let's dream, okay? I don't know if this is right. I don't know if this is of the Lord. But would you dream with me? Let's just lay everything aside. Let's just say, Lord, what do you want? If you are speaking to Bill, and that's what you're asking the missionary church to do, how would we do it? I might have to have somebody come up here and read my notes, because I can't get it big enough. So anyway, we made some attempts, and sometimes the acceptance was not as well received as I would have liked it to have been. But eventually, we set up a commission to look at the whole restructuring, because here's what we discovered. The missionary church was growing rapidly, but not in the established districts. You couldn't find an established district that was growing. All of the growth was taking place in new districts outside of the established districts. We had 11 districts, but we had already divvied up 75, at least 75% of the United States. So Michigan has this territory, another area has 3 districts. Yeah, and I think, Jim, how it went was when we had the merger back in 1969, they just said, okay, there's a concentration of churches, let's say in, let's take East Central where I grew up. Okay, we got some churches around Toledo now from the MCA. We got a few others from this. Well, we don't have anybody to take Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky, so we'll just throw those 3 states in there. You know, and so that's how some of the districts started. Okay. Well, you didn't talk about subdividing districts. District leaders saw those as silos in perpetuity. It was never designed that way, but that's what they saw. So that created some real issues. So we put together a commission to work on the whole restructuring thing. Milt Gerber was a godsend. Most of you don't know Milt. Milt has since deceased, but he was a godsend. He was a dreamer. He was in his 80s. And I trust that when I'm in my 80s, I can dream like Milt. And so he and I would spend hours talking about how this would possibly happen, and he was all on board. Now, some would say, well, the reason we're not growing, for example, none of the 11 districts were growing, okay, except maybe the North Central would have grown a little bit. And the Eastern eventually grew some, but for the most part, everything was pretty much static. So if you're not going to get, if that's not going to grow, why? Well, the first answer you usually get is, well, it's the spiritual life. Same thing you get in your churches. Why aren't we growing? Well, it's spiritual. If we prayed more, if we read our Bible more. Well, I'm not saying there's not some to that. But many times that's not the issue. Then it was interesting in my discovery and my research, I found some documentation on districts grow to about 50 churches, then they stop. They just, you know, very few ever get beyond that. Once in a while you get some. But 50 churches, right in that category, then they just freeze, okay? It's like a lid, about an 80% lid, or a leadership lid in your local church. I call them the invisible lids that hinder. For me, the big kicker was that we were working with the UBCs, United Brethren in Christ, and they were wanting to join us. I remember sitting in a meeting with some DSs. We were talking about where some of these churches were located. And there was a district leader who was going to really pick up a significant number of churches for that district. And he said to me, he said, Bill, why would I want any more churches? I can't handle the ones I've got. That's not a spiritual issue. It was never a spiritual issue. It was a leadership issue. How do you manage 15, 20 more churches? I'm already maxed out. Why? But what it says is, we're not going to grow anymore. It doesn't matter that I have 3 or 4 or 5 states. It doesn't matter I have 25 million people in our target area and we're only maybe pulling 10,000. It says, don't expect us to grow anymore. We're done. But what about all that other territory? Well, that really became an impetus for me to say, we have got to find a way. Somehow, let's talk about it. Let's dream and see what we can come up with. And that's where Milt was such a huge, huge help, because we would sit and we would talk and we would dream. And finally he said, Bill, what do you think it ought to be? So pretty much what we have now is what I put down on paper and gave to Milt and the commission, and he was grateful to help to see it through. Now, so what are the what time is it? Oh, I got to quit. The pros and cons of it. There's a couple things. If indeed 50 is the magical number, you know, a little bit above, a little bit below, you know, somewhere in there, then somehow you've got to find a way to bust through that. It's like when you hit 80% of your prime seating, you got to find a way to bust through that. You got to build. You got to go to 2 services. You got to do something. You got to move the children out so you make room for more to come in. So, and that's what we had to do. So, and talking about breaking down district barriers was not going to be a way we could go. It just politically it was not there. And so, how do we do that? So it was determined, let's do this. Let's encourage our districts to create new districts within themselves. And so it was at that point we just said, let's go to a region. Let's call then the old district a region with multiple districts inside it. Let's get it down. Let's get these districts down closer to where the people are. For example, let's take the Eastern District. Their office was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Do you know how far it is from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Boston? It's 11 hours drive. Do you think the people in Harrisburg are thinking very much about Boston? No, it's not on the radar. Okay? So we got to get leadership in the locations where we're doing these new areas, where we're planting these churches. And the thing is that we've had a lot of good, gifted leadership sitting on the sidelines. We have, I just want to tell you, the pastors of our largest churches, you say they're big churches. I have yet to meet a pastor of a large church who is not involved in things outside of his local church. That local church does not consume all of his energy. You would think it would. But he's thinking beyond that. Dave Embrick, pastor of our Napanee church, he's the chairman of the board of World Gospel Mission, amongst other things. Okay? Because why don't we get that energy? Why don't we get that brain power working for us? Let's get them engaged. Let's get them involved in the local district. I've challenged the North Central District. Why don't you guys give Dave everything south of US 20? Say, David, George, go for it. You know? Okay, so that's the background why, and Michigan breaks up very nicely. In fact, I remember when we sat down with the district board here in Michigan, and we talked about 6 districts. Okay, and you know that you guys in the thumb, you got some of the best real estate there is. You got, I think, maybe the most number of churches in your district. I think you have 13 or 14 churches at least. You know, sizable enough churches to give you some weight to really take off. I thought, wow, that thumb area, that's a great area for a district. And so the idea is to get it back, get the leadership focused in this particular area by the people who are here, by the leaders who are here, and people who say, I would never want to leave my congregation to take over, be a regional leader. Okay? There's a lot of like that. Jim's job has no appeal to them. Absolutely none. You say, oh, can that really be? Yeah, no, I'm telling you. Why would they leave their church to become a regional director? Why leave a budget of $2 million to go and have a budget of $300,000? Why leave a staff of 25 people to a staff of 3 or 4 or 5? It just has no appeal. They don't want to leave their church, but they love the missionary church. They'll get involved in the missionary church. They're already helping everybody else. Why not help us more? Give us some of the benefit of their brains and of their mindset and some of the resources that they have, I think they'll do it. I think some of the things you're going to talk about now. Jim, I've got to put this in here. I don't know if you ever heard Mel Gerber say this, talking about regional directors. I don't know how many times Milt said to me, Bill, regional directors have to work out of the trunk of their car. Don't give them an office. Well, I don't know that I fully agreed with that totally, Jim. But his thought was, their job is to work with district directors to get the districts up and running, to move them, and to cause them. And you know, Michigan is much farther ahead in this process than I think any place else, if I understand correctly, Jim, in the denomination. So, developing this structure which is closer to where the people are, to where the work is being done by those people, I think is really, really significant. Now, let me just say, we said we're going to do this without an increase in assessments to the local church. Now, what that means, and we understood what it meant going in. It meant there had to be some pioneers. Some people who'd say, I don't have to be paid to do this job. I'm willing to ask my local congregation to have a vision of what it means to reach out. You don't have to pay me for this. Will we have paid district superintendents someday? I pray that we will. That we'll have 40 churches to 50 churches in a district, and you'll have a paid district superintendent over that. But that's not where we are right now. We got to get this thing up and running. Some of us have to pay the price. Some of us have to be the. So when I went to Lowell, I said, I'll come on one condition. Well, there were several conditions, but one of those was, you have to release me 1 to 2 days a week as part of my job. You will be a missionary church. You have to release me. I don't want to feel guilty out here doing district work. You've got to release me to do this work. And they did. They agreed to that. So we still follow that. So anyway, Brian, where you are. I don't know if this opens up some questions, I know you may talk about how being together in some of these closer networks, you can partner together, you can work with one another, but I think my time's up. Or Reg, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, does anybody have any questions for Bill? I mean, and again, we're going to talk, as he said, about some of these things, but I'm going to stand up here because I have the mic, but
I've got one too.
These two guys you're about to hear from Dave and Reggie, they're pioneer guys. They're guys who have been doing this work, not getting paid for it. I mean, and I've had the privilege to work with them. And that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to have to take to get to the next level. I appreciate, this church is here because New Life in Bay City said, Brian, you can go a day a week. And maybe it was just to get rid of me, I'm not sure. But you can go a day a week and do something up there. And that's how we're going to push these things forward. It's got to be a new vision. And like I said, Dave and Reg have done a lot. And I think what we'll do, Reg, I mean, you're going to have the whole end of the show anyways. Yeah. We'll go and Dave can give his report, and then I'll give mine, and then you can take care of the business. And if any questions brew out of what Bill said or any of this, we'll handle those when we're done then. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay.
Let's thank Bill for coming over.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like the number 2 hitter in a lineup. You got your best, your best on base percentage guy goes first. Then the number 2 batter. Nobody even knows the number 2 batter. Then the number 3 batter comes in, and you got your power guy, number 4. So here, I'm the number 2 batter this morning, but this evening, that's great. I'm excited to be here. My name is Dave. For those of you who don't know me, I'm pastor over at Fellowship Bible Church. And as of this morning, by our regional director's own word, I apparently am condemned to hell. I don't know what happened. we're in a meeting and he just says, "You're going to hell." I don't know what happened.
I'll testify.
He can testify to that. So, you know what, Jim? I honestly don't remember that story because I was so hurt by that. But we'll get to that later. Yeah. So, yeah, but no, it's all good. But anyhow, I'm also the Strengthening Local Church Coordinator for the FUM Network, and so I work with a team of people. We're just getting started together. We want to come alongside the established church and help them, and look at ways and within the church that we can support the local church, so that we can all get healthy, or we can continue to grow and be healthy churches, so that we can continue this multiplication. And what we love about this also is the ability to come together and pool our resources here in the Thumb. And I'm going to share a little bit about some of the things we did last year, where if left on our own, Fellowship Bible Church could have never have done any of these events. But because we work together as a network, we were able to accomplish some really great things. Just real quick, I want to introduce some of the other members of our team. Myself, Aaron Johnson, and Joel Schwingdinger. We were going to call ourselves the Bearded Wonders, but apparently Aaron decided to shave. I don't know what happened. I know Susie would like the beard back, but you know what it is. And so we are coming together. There's some information in your packet about kind of some of the duties and all that fun stuff, so you can take a look at that. But I just want to take a few moments to look back at what we did last year and then look ahead to some things that we're already working on this year on this level. Last year, it was actually about this time last year, we gathered all of our churches together and we had a night of vision. And we just had everybody come together. We had 92 people there, and we were able to share the vision of what the network could potentially look like. And since then, it's just grown beyond even what I could have imagined. And since then, we did a Memorial Day concert at Brown City Camp, which was completely packed out. We did a Marriage on Mission conference last year where 36 couples enjoyed the encouragement and enrichment brought by Tom and Sandy Blaylock, all for $20 a couple, which I've been listening to different marriage things, and they're like $100 per couple. And so we were really able to bring that in. We did some discipleship training. Lamont hosted a one-day level 1 discipleship training by the Field USA director, Anthony Farrell. Had 25 people show up for that. This past year, we were able to help one of our brothers, pastors, going through a hard time because we had set some money aside for that specific purpose. We've been engaging in pastoral coaching. In fact, we are part of the pilot program that the entire denomination is starting to look to as to how can we grow the local church. What kind of tools can we come alongside, assessments and things like that. And we've been a part of that program. In fact, that's what the meeting was this morning about. And so, and we've set aside money for that too, so that the local church isn't having to pay for these kinds of services. Another thing, and Brian's going to share a little bit about this in a few minutes, but as we continue to grow, we're going to have a team of us that are going to be able to come in, and if your church is hurting, going through a hard time, a transition, or you just need some encouragement, we'll be able to come in and really help you through that process. We were able to do that for one of our churches this past year, and Brian will be sharing a little bit about that. And so some really exciting, awesome things God has been able to do in just this last year. I didn't know that Michigan was at the forefront of these networks, but I've been hearing that we're at the forefront of the Michigan thing. We're leading the way. Other parts of the state are looking to us, and that's really exciting because we're just following God. I mean, we have our steering committee meetings, and it's like, okay, what are we doing? How did we get here? And so I'm just very excited about that. Some of the things that we're looking to do this next year, the first thing is kind of a follow-up to our Marriage on Mission conference. It's going to be a Focus on Family conference, and it's going to be held at Brown City Camp. There's in your packet, last page is a registration form. Bryce Fox has agreed to come and be the speaker. He was at Brown City Camp last year. But this event, if you were at our Marriage on Mission conference, we really kind of just focused in on the husband and the wife. We really wanted to expand that to the entire family, and not just mom and dad, but also uncles and aunts and grandparents and guardians and foster parents and all of that, because that dynamic, and you see it in your community. It's not just mom and dad, it's grandparents, or dad's not in the picture and so uncle's picking up the slack, or whatever it is. So, but we really want to come alongside and help encourage the families and address some of these needs that we have spiritually and biblically. And so we're really looking to do this. Our goal is to arm you with the tools that you can take home to begin building, reconstructing, or encouraging more Christ-centered family time. And so again, in the handout that you have, it lists some early bird rate. We're looking at like $15 a person, or with $5 per child that you bring, because we're going to have children's ministry. We haven't quite lined up that yet. We're hoping to get Paul Dietzel out there. For those of you that go to Brown City Camp, he runs the children's ministry, does a great job with that. And so we're looking to do that. But $15 a person, $5 a child, or at most you will spend is $30 per family. Again, pretty reasonable. You get lunch and all that out of there. And then, of course, if you go past that, the early bird is up to $50. Again, very reasonable for a family. We're also trying to encourage you. It's good that we can all come together, but of course, the goal is to reach out beyond just ourselves. And so we want to encourage you, if you know of an unchurched family that could really use this kind of principles, or you're just praying through and you're working with them, they're hot on your radar, you're praying for them, you're trying to disciple them. If you register an unchurched family, you both get 50% off that total. And so if you can encourage your neighbor to come to this, it's extremely inexpensive. Or the other thing that you can do, and maybe this would be something on your heart, is maybe you say to that family, you know what, we'll cover your cost to go to this, because it's $30. We'll just cover the whole thing. You can go for free. And so we're working on this to do that. And as always, if money is ever an issue, let your people know. Scholarships are available. Well, money should not be the reason you don't go to these events. And so we're really excited about that. For the pastors, we want to try to get our pastors together. We get together about quarterly, and usually it's just the pastors, but we want to get together with some of the pastors and their families. And so we're looking at doing a cookout this year with the pastors and their family. And so if you're interested in that, what we're looking to do is maybe after the Focus on Family conference, having the pastors, they can come over to my house about 10 minutes from Brown City Camp, and we'll just have a good time that night. And so we'll be talking more about that next Tuesday at the regional conference. But we're really excited about that. We've been doing again the church health checkup with the Rinkies, part of that pilot program. That's been continuing to grow. We're now up to half of our churches are engaged in that. If your church is not engaged in that and you'd like to be, please see me. Or you have questions, please see me or Brian, because Brian was there today. We'd love to get you connected with that. And again, we're setting aside monies to help the churches be able to do that. So they're coming in and they're doing this with you, and you don't have to worry about paying or covering any of their expenses like that. Couple other items, and Brian's going to share a little bit more about some of the discipleship training that we're looking to do. But one of the initiatives that we want to kind of do this year is a lot of our churches, we've been through some training. We know what discipleship looks like, but we're not putting it into practice for whatever reason. And so we want to be encouraging churches to be out there into the community trying new outreaches. And next Tuesday when we get together, we'd like for you to come. There's going to be a section where we break out into the networks, and we want you to come ready with what are some outreaches that you've done in your church or you've seen done, whether they've worked or they haven't worked, because just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it might not work for another church. But come up with ideas of outreaches that have been working, and then trying to implement some of those into our community. And so we're not reinventing the wheel. We're sharing information on that. Also, the idea of we want to work with our churches. When you get that new visitor in, because you've done these outreaches, you've been in the community, and now you get people starting to come to your church. What do we do with them? And so we want to start that conversation. What does your church do when you get a new person? Because for some churches, like, and I'll be really honest and open, fellowship, you walk into the church, I may or may not be able to greet you, but I know that there are several people in our church who will greet you. But the problem is you'll probably leave, and I will never know anything about you. And I don't like that as a senior pastor. And so what are we doing to help catch those people as they come in? And so we're going to be talking about that on Tuesday as well. Some other things that are still in the planning stages. I know that there are some of the pastor spouses who are working to get together for the pastor spouses. We're looking at doing a human trafficking awareness training because that is a big issue. And we're very fortunate. I don't see Rick here tonight, but our pastor at Open Door, his wife works with an organization that goes and educates people on human trafficking. And we want to be able to encourage one another and to be aware of this because, I just realized Justin texted me. Way to go, Justin. Thanks. I'll have to look at this later. Anyhow. But the idea of human trafficking, and I heard the statistic that there's actually more slaves today than there were during the Civil War time. Worldwide, there's more slaves, and unfortunately, it's here in Michigan. It's here in the thumb, and now he's going to text me again, turning off my phone. But anyhow, so we're looking at those kind of ideas, and we want to hear some ideas from you. What are some other things that we can do together as a network of churches so that we can partner together and share ideas? And we're also looking at just things that maybe aren't even they don't even have to be missionary, church-driven things, as long as they're Christ-centered, kingdom-building kind of things. There's a church in Sandusky, Countryside Free Methodist. They do an amazing men's conference once a year. We want to come alongside them and encourage our men to go to these kinds of things. And so we're just excited. So if you guys have some ideas for this, we're going to be talking a little bit more on Tuesday, I think, about that. So come prepared for that. Or if you have some questions, we're going to be opening up the floor for those a little bit later. I think I'm done, and I hopefully got us back on track. So anyway, I think it's Brian's turn.
When you leave today, I think there's one of these for every church. Our church is working with the local Rotary Club, the local school. We actually have a speaker coming in this next Wednesday. We'll be at a USA Auditorium about human trafficking and some of those things. Pastor Justin has worked with some folks down at Spring Arbor, where he's alumni of, and like I said, with the local Rotary Club and Drs. Ned and Cheryl Canfield. And this just kind of came together, and for the churches that are close, next Wednesday, if anybody would like to come over, like to take one of those, please feel free to do that. So I want to cover my area pretty quickly. There's a report in here. Maybe it's worth the paper it's written on, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I my heart obviously is to multiply churches and to multiply disciples. I appreciate the things that are going on in this network, and they come together. I start out talking about the PEC prayer walks, and the churches that came together there to say, we're just going to start seeing what God wants. And I've been able to be over there once on one of their prayer walks with them, and then in February, I think it ended up being, it wasn't supposed to be, we met with some of those guys who are over there. Anthony Farrell's been working with a group of guys, and they've been using some Field USA things, and they're making some public, they're using some public space to gather people. They found a place of peace, kind of, and I appreciate the work they're doing there. And again, we just came alongside saying, if there's anything we can do, as a network, as a group of churches, that's what we have to be of. We have to be aware of and always be asking the question, where are there possibilities? Where are there new possibilities? And I appreciate what Bill shared. Large churches you can look at and yeah, they can do that. But you know what? As a group of 10 churches, we can do that. We can do that. You're going to see a little bit later when Reg puts up the budget. What a benefit is to be a network of churches. some of our ministry share money that's now coming back directly into our network to be able to fund some of these things as Dave's talking about. And so, we went to Peck and we said, boy, if there's resources you need, go there. Here from this church, we've been prayer walking in Unionville for a couple of years, and we did a VBS in the park in Unionville last year. We're going to do one there again this year, actually starting next Thursday night. If you just want to come over for some singing and those kind of things, and it's also the World Day of Prayer, we're going to start meeting again in the Unionville Cafe down here on Thursday nights. It's been a place of peace for us. They're open to it, and so we gather there. We have some hymn sheets, some people sing. We do a little, testimony kind of stuff. And when I was talking to the lady who runs it, she's like, "Okay, I got to get those on because when you guys were doing those last year, I had some people who just came just for those." And it's that kind of a thing. And so we're gonna start doing that. And obviously, just to update those of you, Akron. We purchased a closed United Methodist Church down there last fall, and we came across a group of people who are working there, and so we're continuing to meet with them. Pastor Justin has been going over there for the last 3 or 4 months now on Sunday nights, and he's kind of been using some Son's Life Ministry teaching materials with some kind of X group and Ignite principles in working with them, and they're catching some of those things, and that realistically, our Son's Life bought the building and those things. But one of the things I asked Reg and Dave, and that I said, for a little bit of buy-in, could we get some money just for the equipment, and we approved that there, just so that that's going on. And then there's some other things. A New Creation, it's been my privilege to work with John and those guys, and one of the things we've been kind of doing with that is really kind of treating it as a new launch in so many ways, and I have appreciated that congregation and just what I see. And John, if you want to share anything about that, I would be glad to let you do that too. I see something happening there, and very excited. What? Okay, but see, that's one of the strengths of these networks. Man, this is my brother down the road, and this is our sister church, and it's like, I sat with Jim today as he talked about, one of the most painful parts of his job over the years has been watching churches close. And a lot of the times it's just like, as part of the kingdom, if we could just come alongside our brothers and our sister congregations and say, how can we help? And we have to do that. And that's why we have to get this down to the local level. It's not a top-down thing. That's the beauty of this whole restructuring thing, and I think that's so important. Justin, you want to give me that? I just have about 5 or 6 pictures here. Actually, this is kind of I don't know what this comes out of, but really this kind of comes out of one of the things we met last September, and Pastor Joel from the Cass City Church said, "Hey, this hurricane just went through. Rather than send money, could we do something?" And I think every church in our of the 10 had something to do with it, sending people or doing something. And we did a couple of programs, but I just real quick, this is just like a picture from Angleton Church, from the front door there. In the church, the pastor's house is Pastor Alfonso. His house flooded, and so we went down there. Myself and Dave Spencer from New Life flew down there, assessed what we might be able to do in the week and with some money. And over the course of the week, then we just had a time where we went down there. It was a fabulous experience. 10 churches working together to say, what can we do? What can we do? And by the end of the week, I think somewhere here, by the end of the week, we had done all new wiring in the house, all new electrical stuff. We hung drywall throughout. All of it had at least one coat of mud on it. Put new doors on, closed up the back. We did a ton of work really in a week time. But that's just 10 churches saying, we can affect the kingdom. We can affect the kingdom. We can work together to do those things. And every one of those people who were on that trip, if another one came up, because we're trying to build a relationship there. I actually was back down there in March, and just the family is so appreciative. They were just one step away from moving in, and as Pastor Alfonso said, we're going to get to move in before almost all of our neighbors, because we had this crew come in and do that stuff. And that's what churches coming together to do on a local level can do. And obviously we want to multiply ministries, and we want to do that. But none of us are Colonial Woods. But I'll guarantee you, together we can do even more. You know, and we just really have to challenge ourselves. We're working on a training right now. Dave already talked a little bit about the Field USA training that we had last year. We're working on a training right now. I've talked a little bit with John, and we're hoping New Creation is going to host that this fall. Just kind of part of their rebirth and process. And you know, it'll be a one-day thing, basically with monies that are coming back from the region. All the people will have invested is probably about $10 in materials. You know, the region will pretty much cover all the rest of it, and, you know, and including a lunch and everything. And so it's one of those things where we'll just, you know, again, we'll talk about some of the basics of discipleship and what can the local church. I appreciate John's leadership in this because it's a tough process, this turnaround. But every time I get the privilege to go over there and help lead some of this and see the work they're doing, and what Dave talked about earlier, the meeting we sat in, we're trying to identify 4 or 5 people from this network who could go for the training that's going to be offered by, you know, through the region and through the denomination. I mean, I didn't realize maybe until today that we are at the forefront in this little thumb network and you know, we're going to train people from this network to be able to go out and care for these churches rather than trying to have someone from the region or something from the top do that. And I'm really excited about it. I mean, you know, like I said, Reg and I'd be in real trouble without Dave, because Dave keeps all the ducks in a row and all of those kind of things, and we're really grateful for him. But, you know, he gives a lot of his time, as does Reg. And, you know, man, Bill's words of you got to be willing to pioneer. You got to be willing to go out there. And you know, that's kind of what I'm hoping you guys get tonight and challenge. And we're going to talk about a few nuts and bolts, and I'm going to get out of here because Reg is going to handle some of the other business stuff and go from there. But I appreciate, you know, I appreciate you folks being here, and just appreciate we're dreaming. This is bigger than us. This is bigger than us. If we just start talking about our 10 small churches, that's too small. You know, it's a bigger vision than that. You know, we still have a vision of some kind of ministry in every town in the Thumb area. When we were working on planting Sebring, there was a vision kind of like the M25 corridor all the way around. Can the missionary church have some ministry presence in every town around the M25 corridor? And so, you know, those are the things we're dreaming of. And, you know, small towns, one of the things I can tell you here in Sebring is a lot of these people, I mean, we have people come to the Lord on a monthly basis, and maybe not as many as we'd like to, or those things, and we're still working on them. But one of the things that made us strong at first is we came back here, and a lot of people who were solid believers were going somewhere else to worship. We have this vision and this view of, can we get those people to come back to their small communities to strengthen their small communities again? You know, that's our vision, and that's, you know, right now I'm your multiplication, whatever I am. Yeah, ministry multiplication coordinator. Okay. Well, I have been for the last year, so. but those are the dreams we have, and so anyways, again, we'll open all that up for questions. I'm going to turn it over to Reg. Yeah, it's because we're right on time now.
Okay. Well. Well, and the schedule says from 8 to 9. We're not gonna go to 9 o'clock. It'll be about 9:30. So, first of all, I really appreciate you being here tonight, representing your local church, and being a part of this network. And I just want to say that having Brian and Dave as part of the steering committee has really made my job a lot easier. As you can see, they do a lot of the yeoman work and get things done, and they're the ones that are pushing me, because I'm the old man at the table, and so they're encouraging me and pushing me. So what we want to do tonight, because we want to certainly be in compliance to the region. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of things. And so we are going to be looking at actually doing some voting. So Yahoo for that. You guys get to vote. And we're not we asked every church to bring a delegate. If your pastor talked to you about that, that's fine. If not, if you just want to vote, you can. So we're not gonna check your ID to make sure that you're a delegate, unless we get a split vote. Then we're gonna have to figure something out. But hopefully you'll look at the pamphlet there at the journal, some of the things that we're going to be looking at. And again, I am so grateful for the dream of what the Thumb Network is and what it can be. And I just want to echo the dream of the M25 corridor. Just looking at those places on the map. And then as it trickles down, and I don't know how far south we want to go. You know, is 60? You know, anything south of 69 is the city. So we don't. You know, we probably won't go that far south. But where does God want to take us in the Thumb? And we think of Huron County and Tuscola County, Sanilac Lake County. There are a lot of lost people, and there are a lot of people that would love to come together and fellowship and see something happen in their community. And that's why we're doing this, and that's why we want to be a part of this. So what we want to do tonight is we're going to look at, you're going to be voting on 6 different things. The first thing would be the mission statement in the pamphlet, or I think we might have it up on the screen maybe. And so we're just gonna pound these through. And so this is what we're going to be voting on. This will be, I guess, in Robert's Rule of Order. This is the steering committee bringing a proposal to the body, and so we would need a motion and a second to accept this kind of as our mission statement. And I'm going to let you just take a moment and read that. I don't have to read that for you. Yes. Heaven forbid. I mean, what do you think, Body? Great. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So it's not just geographically, certainly, but it's ministry heart. Mm-hmm. Okay.
If anybody else speaks, we just want to make sure we get it because we are recording. if people want to take it home with them to maybe show people who weren't able to be here.
Yeah, good.
I know I'm looking forward to rewatching this next Friday night. So, but just if
What
if
you do on Friday
but
night?
if for leadership board purpose, so if anybody else wants to speak to that, then
Good.
I'll be
Good.
with this.
Appreciate that. Okay. Would there be any other questions? We'd entertain a motion to receive this as our mission statement for the Thumb Missional Network. You have a second? All right. Any further discussions? All right. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay? Great. Number 1 down. Only 7 more. No, 5. The next, we'd like to just talk about the idea and composition of the steering committee. That's on the front page of that. What we are really looking at is the district director, and the official title is not Pope. Okay, so that's been thrown
High
around
priest.
here. That's in any reality or fantasy network. There's not the but the district director and we would that would be appointed by the regional superintendent. Then we have the SLC coordinator, ministry multiplication coordinator, and a financial secretary. So really just looking at composition of the steering committee at this point. I would believe that if we have that as a consensus, that's not necessarily something we would have to vote on, because we are actually going to be voting on the those people that are going to be filling those positions. So if I can take license in this to say, would you agree in that composition of the steering committee? Does that make sense? Is there a consensus to that, or is there questions? Phil, you just look like you have. All right, that's no, that's fine. That's why I asked the question. You have a question? Yes, with a microphone though, because we want to hear your voice later.
Did the people on this have to be pastors? Is there any? Has that been designated, or?
I don't believe that it has been designated as as pastor. So I don't believe that was a prerequisite for the steering committee. Would that be a recommendation? Okay, just a question. Okay. Yeah. Right here, Carl.
Just so that we don't have to do this again, is there wisdom in making this to be like a minimum of, so that if you wanted to have additional people on this team, whether it's lay people at large or whatever, I mean, if we grew and you needed to have more people on this type of committee, I don't know,
Yes.
just a question.
I think that would be a good addition. This would be the minimum. Yes. And there is discussion as to when we were to become a full-fledged district, what type of governing board would that look like? Because the steering committee is different than the governing board, but it's there is room for that, and room for additional people on that. So I believe that would be good to add that this would be the minimum with additional people allowed on. Okay, with that then, any other questions? Okay, we would have a motion to receive this as the composition of our steering committee with the addition comment of a minimum, and that there would be addition. Okay, we have a second? We have a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Now I want to do the specifics. These two gentlemen have already been working on this. On the front page again, you'd look these strengthening the local church coordinator. We are looking at this point of staggering these elections so that there wouldn't be a full turnover after 3 years. I think we all understand this system. So for the strengthening the local church coordinator, we would be electing this person for a 2-year term. And David has graciously agreed to allow his name to stand. Or we didn't give it an option. I think maybe that was the case. So David's name, David Engel, Pastor David from Fellowship Bible, is on that. Would there be any discussions or any questions in regards to his nomination? Go ahead. No.
Just for procedure, are we talking about nomination or election?
I'm sorry, election.
Okay, so will you be opening up the floor for any other nomination? I'm not going to make any. I don't even have anybody else that I want to nominate. Seems like
No,
we should, though. No.
Yes, at this
Okay.
at this place, we would open
Okay,
for each of
that's-
these. We'd open the floor for nominations. No, thank you. You got to keep me on task, Phil. It's a full-time job. Ask my wife. So David's name has been submitted. Is there any other nominations from the floor? All right. Do you have a second to that? All in favor say aye. All right. Now we will vote on David Engel. All in favor of electing David Engel as the strengthening the local church coordinator, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Didn't think you would, David. Now we have the ministry multiplication coordinator. We'll be voting for electing this person for a 1-year term. And Brian Reinhardt has allowed his name to stand. Would there be any nominations from the floor for this position? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to cease nominations. You have a second? All right. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. So now Brian's Reinhardt, Pastor Brian, for 1 year. Yeah. When he sent that to me, it was in bold. I took it off there, but for a 1-year term. So all in favor of Brian Reinhardt as our ministry multiplication coordinator, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. The fourth member of this steering committee, we have no names at this point. And I think in some of my communication to the local churches, was asking if anyone would have a name that they would like to nominate for the financial secretary. And David, would you just share maybe real quick because David's been taking this responsibility on.
Yeah, at this point, we're not handling all of our finances because we just don't have that capability. The region is doing that, and so what I have been doing is basically been a liaison, working with Janet McClavey at the regional office, basically approving the monies that we're spending and letting her know to issue checks and to transfer monies for the different things that we've done. So basically, and then I've helped establish or present the budget, track some of those finances a little bit better so that we know here what we have available. Because Janet, we love her, but she's in the office once a week. She's already overloaded. And so this kind of gives us a clearer picture of our finances. She sends me a report every month. We, if there's any discrepancies, we go over it. But basically, it's just kind of being a liaison with her to cut the checks and then report back, you know, kind of where we stand with our finances and stuff like that. So.
Yep.
Things we've encouraged you as a network to do is to be as lean as you possibly can be, to be as simple in your structure as you possibly can be. And many of the new networks around the denomination do not handle their own finances in terms of having to take responsibility for the bookkeeping. And so we want you to be focused as much of your leadership energy on multiplying disciples, groups of disciples, and churches and groups of churches. That's the way we want you to be able to funnel most of your energy. We will normally, as Americans, the way we are in our culture, we will default to creating all kinds of structure and committees and boards to do a whole bunch of things. So in contrast to our default, you'll need to discipline yourself to stay as disciplined as possible and focused on your mission to multiply disciples, groups of disciples, churches, and groups of churches. So that's the reason why I've encouraged you not to, don't worry about the fact that your money is all carefully recorded and audited and done by professionals, and so you don't need to worry about that. Okay? Just wanted to add that a little bit.
So in that, is there someone that God woke you up at 2 o'clock this morning and said, you know, you really should be the financial secretary for the Thumb Network, or maybe something like that? Would anyone like to consider that position? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Pastor Paul Melcher has agreed to allow his name to stand. Are there any other nominations from the floor? I would call for nominations to cease. Is there a motion to that? Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. So we'll vote for Pastor Paul. And remember, we didn't say what the criteria was for the steering committee. So if Dave can be on it, so can you. I mean, it's just there. That's right. That's right. We really set the bar. No, I'm. That would be for a 3-year term. Yes. All right. So all those in favor. Right, contingent upon that, they better not. So we will vote for Paul Melcher. For all those in favor of Paul, say aye. All opposed, same sign. No. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. The last item is always the fun part, and that is in your packet, second to the last page, I believe. There is the budget that David has put together, and we've looked over this budget a couple of times, and you can really see from last year where we sit at the end of 2017, and then again the different ministries, and these were again things that we discussed at the steering committee level, and looking at what we want to do in regards to the different aspects of ministry, and certainly caring for the pastors, caring for churches, as well as outreach. And obviously that is our goal and our purpose and our vision for that. So I'd entertain any questions that anyone might have in regards to the budget. I think we all understand that really the two sources that we're getting these monies in. One is there are a number of churches that have a line item in their budget that they send to the region every month that they give towards the Thumb Network. So those monies go right into our account, as well as at this point, the 20% of your ministry shares that you send in, those monies go into our network funds. And so 20% of the ministry shares that your church brings in will go back into our budget for us to use locally as well. So I believe we have a pretty healthy budget to work on. Don, you have a question? Just
that 20% is based on last year's ministry shares, and that's what goes into the next year's.
Actually, this is the projected budget, the projected ministry shares for 2018. Well, we paid last year. Okay. Okay. Yep. That's why we have a budget guy over here, not me. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. I would entertain a motion to receive the budget. Okay. Do we have a support? Okay. Everybody just waits for someone else. All right. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. All right. One thing I'd like to do, and I didn't ask him beforehand, but certainly I would like to hear from Pastor Jim Moment if he'd want to bring a word to this body, certainly as our regional director, and just to share a little bit. But I would just entertain any questions that you may have on anything that's been shared tonight that we may or may not be able to answer. If there's anything that you'd like to share. Yeah. Excuse me, just a second.
Anybody can answer this, but I would like to maybe hear from Bill and or Jim. What's going to be the hurdles that we're going to have to get over in order to make this really successful? Like, is it going to be human nature? Is it going to be the people from our churches not understanding, us having to communicate it? Because this is a drastic change for a lot of people. And as I communicate it to our church, it's hard because, again, it's in the infant stages. And so everybody's like, what are you talking about? What exactly is happening? And there's always that fear thing. So I'll stop there.
Okay.
Well, the vision for Multiplying Networks is founded and based upon us decentralizing from the denomination and the regional level, to decentralize the passion and the ownership for the harvest. There's nobody that has the same heart for the lost people in your neighborhood like you do. And so that's a key thing. One of the key hurdles would be to continue to develop a love and a compassion for lost people in the Thumb of Michigan that just drives you. Go back. The other hurdle is the application. We're going to be talking about it next week a lot in terms of the mission and the heart we've got to have for the mission and the Holy Spirit dynamically moving in us so that we're contagious and so that the power of God's Spirit moves and motivates everything we do in terms of reaching out to lost people. So the other hurdle is our, I would say, Carl, is our ingrownness, how isolated we are. Many times our churches, we become isolated and ingrown, two separate dynamics, really. And so that's huge because the health of your network is based on the health of your churches. And so the passion for the network to reach lost people in the thumb of Michigan and wherever you're located, off the edges of it, is all based upon what happens in our hearts as pastors and church leaders and in the local churches coming together. So those are the first 2 or 3 things I think of that are hurdles for us to get over to grow. I'll just throw in another one. There is a lot of work being done at the region, and 2 of your representatives, Brian and David, have been through this, and so has Pastor Bill representing the West. But we're going through, we're very concerned about the health and the development of many of our established churches. And everybody's talking about it all across the nation, all the denominations. Everybody's experiencing a lot of difficulty. Our church is, or our culture is slowly becoming less and less of a go-to-church culture. So we can't rely any longer upon all of them coming to us. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be attractional, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a love that draws people in, because they will come in. But we're going to have to learn how to think go to them. We're going to have to change the come to us to the go to them, and that's how you and I think and we lead our lives individually. So, and that's part of the ingrownness and the outreaching spirit that needs to come into our churches. So that question is the $10,000 question, you know, a $10 million question is what do we got to do to become more outreaching, more effective at reaching lost people, more effective at reaching people out in the neighborhoods of the culture that we live in, because that's where Jesus wants us to be. I just did a study in the last few days upon all the resurrection appearances and what Jesus said after the resurrection. And that's when I messed up on my illustration today with David when I was talking about this. And I don't want to repeat what I said. It just kind of, it was an accidental statement. But just imagine, what I did is I said with Dave when I was doing it the right way, just imagine David going into heavenly glory, okay? He dies, and Jesus brings him back again from either heaven or whatever. Jesus was in kind of an intermediate state before he went to the right hand of the Father. We all know that before the ascension. But for 40 days, Jesus appeared to all kinds of people over those 40 days after resurrection. And there are 3 last words that he made. The first one was in a closed-up room where all the disciples were gathered in Jerusalem the day of the resurrection. And Jesus went in there and he says, as the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. The second one was a week later when Jesus took some of the disciples and they were at a mountain up in the north part of the Sea of Galilee. And he gathered them together and he gave them the Great Commission, and you know the key word there was go. And that's where the Great Commission was spoken to the disciples. The third one was close to Pentecost, near day 40, when he got them together and he said, you shall be my witnesses. So there are 3 of them at 3 different locations in the 40 days after the resurrection. And so if we can live that and we can really take that seriously to heart, that is where the revival of the church will come, when we start obeying Jesus' words and learning. When Jim Keller, Jim and Brenda, going through this process of learning how to be less isolated and more embedded into our community and into the lost people around us, that's where it starts, with each of us doing that. And then it fans out and goes from there. I don't remember the original question, but at least I got my point across.
Well, I did want you to share, so appreciate that. Yep. Yeah.
I think another critical area is, you know, in another year and a half, we're going to have an election. Okay? And there's nothing so far that has been put in stone. No districts have been established. And so you don't have any real structure. The next leader is going to be very critical at that point. He may choose to go back to the old system, like a number of our guys are doing. I mean, they don't have a vision for it. Now, Jim has had a vision for it. In fact, I encouraged him, back a few years ago, to stay with it. I said it's going to be hard for him because he's in that transition phase. It's going to be hard for him, but he's the one to do it. He's got the political change in his pocket to help it to happen, but he's been in the system for a long time, but he's the right one to do it. And so, but the next one may not have that same vision, and we don't have anything set up that guarantees you're going to keep going. So that to me is a really critical issue. Let's get these guys district status, Jim. No.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thought, comment, question? The best place to ask a question is around the cookies. So just in case, you want to do that. Brian, why don't you come up and you can close us in prayer, and if there's any other instructions. But Jim had some books here to give away, and I forgot about them. So here's what I'm going to do. Who has a birthday closest to today? Closest to this day. Happy birthday.
Don't give them all to me. I already have every one of those books. So.
Oh, never mind. I'm not going there either. No. Well, you can take these Tuesday and give them. Oh, was somebody? Oh, birthday? Yeah. Who had the birthday? Tomorrow. That's pretty close. Yeah. All right. All right. How about anniversary? Closest to today. Anniversary. Who's in May? John? May 4th? Tomorrow. Got the. All right. John is pretty close over here. John's May 4th there. That's all I got. I can't think of anything else. Okay. Absolutely. There you go. Yeah. Merry Christmas. All right. Well, really appreciate you being here tonight, and hopefully you've got some answers to some questions and some heart of passion and feeling our heartbeat for what God wants to do in Nathema, Michigan. I think He's got some great things in store for us and for the church and for His kingdom.
Let's pray and then eat up everything over there, would you? Let's pray together. Lord, thank you. Father, thank you that you have called us together as the church. And Father, in these days, it's much bigger than us, and we want to be part of building the kingdom. But Father, even in these days, as Bill has challenged us with the word missionary, are we truly missionaries? Are we reaching out to those around us? Father, help us to live up to our denominational name, and that it's not halfway around the world, but it's right next door. And Lord, we live in an area from a population standpoint, maybe it doesn't make much sense. But Father, this is where you have us. And so these are our neighbors. These are the people we need to reach. So grateful, Father, to be in ministry with these group of men and women who call themselves missionary churches here in the Thumb area. Father, been blessed in this process. We ask that you would continue to give us a fresh vision. And Father, that the dreams would be big enough that only if you show up will they be able to be accomplished. Father, thank you again for these men who have given of their time to serve you and who catch the vision of it being about building the kingdom and not our own kingdoms. Father, forgive us for the times we just slide back into our, let's create more structure, let's create more committees, let's do this and that. And Father, help us to be there to reach out, to help one another to accomplish the goals you would have us. Again, we can't do this on our own. We need you. So Father, we come seeking a fresh anointing of your Spirit in these days. In Jesus' name, amen.